You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record. I'm talking with the great Toni Natalie, who just gave a powerful victim impact statement at Keith Raniere's sentencing yesterday. Welcome, Toni. Thanks so much for talking to me about the sentencing that went on yesterday. So what was it like for you?
It was like Christmas. It was pretty amazing. It was like Christmas.
So what is the procedure for someone who's going to give a victim impact statement?
You have to be a victim, obviously, a victim of the crime presented during the case, and you send in a letter to the court. There's a longer version of what I read in court that I sent to the judge with much more detail. I mean, yesterday was 21 years to the day that I was forced to file bankruptcy. So there's 21 years worth of relentless insanity. And I laid that out in the letter that I sent to the judge about Claire and with Keith. And then I kind of chunked it down just to be able to share some of my insight of how I feel about Keith, because I thought it was important right before he left to hear my voice one more time.
So could you see his face while you were giving your statement?
Yes. So because of COVID, the courtroom, everyone separated. Remember when they were doing the jury selection in that courtroom, there was like 250 people in there. When they did the victim impact statements and key sentencing, I'd say 25, because they have everyone distanced. Mm-hmm. And where I ended up sitting was a clear line of sight where whoever was stand and speak, and then directly in front of that was Keith, and directly behind that was Maura Penza, and to the left of me was the judge. So I had like a perfect seat. It was Christmas. I had the best seat in the house. Actually, the judge did, but second best seat in the house. I could see everything. I could see his reaction to...
So was he behind plexiglass, like Silence of the Lambs type thing? Or was just the whole table behind plexiglass?
So there was plexiglass between, on the prosecution side. You know, I don't believe there was plexiglass at the table where he was. There wasn't. There was Mark Agnifilo, Keith, and Penny Garagos. And then behind them, or next to them, was Paul Daranassian. So there wasn't plexiglass there. It was just kind of the table, the attorney's table. And then in the back, on the other side of the courtroom, was Maura Penza and several other prosecutors.
And so what was Keith wearing?
Oh, my God, I was so excited. He had an orange jumpsuit on. Not completely. So
Did he?
Yeah, well, he had on a blue, like a navy blue jumpsuit, but his feet were orange. They were like orange rubber shoes of some sort. They didn't look like sneakers because they didn't have any lace. They looked like rubber booties. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
You talked about filing bankruptcy because you were a victim of one of these frivolous lawsuits. Was that funded by Claire's money, or was that before Claire's time?
No, it was before Claire's time. And I had a health food business in Saratoga, several of them actually. And when Keith decided that Nancy decided that I should call Keith the Vanguard, and things were going pretty heading south in our relationship, and we broke it off, I really did try to maintain my home for my child and my business and my life. And then my parents were there. My life was there. And what basically happened was I had a business there, and they came and put a virus in my computer system. So when Keith and I were in the thralls of our breakup, they came and put a virus in my computer system, and a little smiley face popped up on the computer, and it said, "You have 24 hours to contact the administrator or else." And it clicked down, and in 24 hours, my whole database was wiped out, gone, everything, every client, every aspect of my business was disappeared. Then they broke in and took all the paper records. So I didn't, because I had backup in paper, and they broke in and took all of those. When you have X amount of money coming in to sustain things and X amount of money going out, and then it's gone, what do you do? So within a 3-month period, I was contacting vendors and people and saying, I can't do this. If I can't pay you, I can't do these things. So I filed bankruptcy. I didn't have a choice.
Oh, okay.
literally, figuratively wiped me out. And I thought, okay, I was still young, might go someplace and it'll be fine, and I'll figure this out and rebuild. And my bankruptcy took 8 years and 4 months of constant litigation.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think it was interesting that it was the same day, because the day that he wiped out my life, his wife got wiped out. For me, the significance was the day that he thought he was destroying my life turned out to be 21 years later, the end of his. So.
And you also talk a lot about him being really a weak person that only just used other people to do his dirty work. That seemed kind of true to the end, no?
Yeah. Keith is lazy. I mean, he's lazy. The joke about how he didn't need any sleep. I mean, he slept all the time. He would sleep all day. He was up all night. He's lazy. What he was very good at convincing people that they would not have their skills without him. He was very good at getting productive people to do things for him. And that's what he had. When I was there, I was the productive person. When Nancy came along, it became Nancy. Only Nancy came, as I said, with her own.
And I really noticed that really deep, hypnotized, trance-like look in their eyes. It's very different when you're up close with these cult members. Their eyes are very glassy and very glazed, and just no emotion the whole time from beginning to end. I mean, like they were at maybe a classical music concert.
Right.
They all got together. Nothing. I mean,
nothing.
The normal people in the room were devastated by, what we heard was so consistent. Again, with Claire's, it was so consistent. You got such a clear picture of who Claire Bronfman was to these people and what she did. And then with Keith, you get this, it's because he's a more convoluted type person. Convoluted but clear picture of a pedophile, a sexual abuser, a liar, a charlatan, a cheat. I mean, that was clear. So I wonder where, I thought to myself, did you think, what could they say in his defense to say that he was a good person after that? It was so consistent and repetitive. Everybody saw the same person.
Keith is the pedophile in the playground, and all of those other people were like the safety guards that were supposed to make sure the kids were safe, and they were doing just the opposite. The group, the dynamic, if you heard it over and over again, the people that knew what was going on, the people that perpetuated the lie, the inner circle that helped him to achieve this. He's lazy, Roberta. He could never do this on his own. He had to have people around him, whether it be women that he was seducing and sleeping with, or men that he was paying vast amounts of money to buy him political favors and such. He's incapable of doing this on his own, but he's a mastermind at manipulation. And that's how he got where he is. Once he got the power of the Bronfman's money behind him to get by him political favors and attorneys and all kinds of things, that's why it took so long. This should have been done and over with years ago. Northern District had this in their back pocket. This was in Albany, and it was brought in Brooklyn. That's pretty sad.
You think Claire's money stopped it from going forward in Albany?
Yeah, I do. I think they bought political favor. I think they had a lot of attorneys in their pockets, a lot of political people in their pockets. And somebody called me the other day, and he said to me, a report, he says, off the record, is it true that Joe Bruno was involved with Nexium? I'm like, on the record, yeah. Google it. I mean, come on. Jack Casey, Joe Bruno.
And what was sad for me about that hearing was that the victim impact statements were fantastic and powerful and meaningful, but equally as interesting was the second half of the sentencing, where the judge really got into it with Raniere's lawyer. And no one's reporting on that. I haven't seen anything on that. Have you? Am I just missing it?
I have to tell you honestly, after the sentencing, by the time I got back to the hotel, it was 11. I passed out. I got in my car and I drove home and I called you. So
I know.
I really haven't read anything.
I was looking for myself to get an exact quote. It was so clear he was getting life. But what kind of prison do you think they'll send him to? And
certainly going to a supermax because of the amount of time he's going to be serving. And back to your comment about why there was nothing, I watched reporters get up and walk out once they realized it was life. So they were going for who was going to get to print first. So I think that might have happened. And with Agnifilo, what are you going to say? All these victims just got up and talked about the horrific things that he did. And he wanted to discuss Keith's intent. What was his intention?
Mm-hmm.
I thought the judge was going to blow a gasket. He kind of looked at him like, finally said, you want to discuss intentions? Let's discuss his intention with a 15-year-old. What was your client's intention with a 15-year-old?
And he said, I remember being a 45-year-old man. I'm 72 now, the judge said. And he tried to go back to that script again because he had nothing without it, so he was just stuck. And it was wonderful to watch because I wrote half of my report before the sentencing to just put everything that happened before the sentencing in context. And I predicted that was exactly what he would talk about, his good intentions. I said that I just don't want to hear him talk about his good intentions.
Yeah.
Because that's what has been the drum he's been hitting since the early hearings of this case. So.
Right. And I think that's why Agnifilo pointed to the statement that I made where I said,
he can't leave women. He doesn't know how to leave women. That was one of them.
Right. He doesn't know how to leave women. He loved her. That's why. Judge was like, really? Are you kidding me? That's the best you have, huh?
What was it like for you to hear your name come out of Keith Raniere's lawyer's mouth?
It was so odd because I thought, why are you talking about me? So in a typical Nexium fashion, it's distraction. So don't look over here at the 15-year-old girl that he groomed and raped for years. Let's talk about the woman that he's been litigating against and was with 20 years ago. It was just a deterrent. It was ridiculous because the judge was not going for it.
No, and he brought up Claire Bronfman again. I was shocked about Cammie and the lawyer. I had never heard that before.
I had not either.
That she...
Yeah.
So is it because her father is still in the cult? How did she ask for a lawyer from Keith's team? How did that happen?
I don't know the logistics on the background on that. I know that we all know there was a trust, right, that was funding all of the legal defense funds. It was not just for the people that were charged. It was for other people as well. And she obviously must have been one of the people that they felt needed an attorney. And according to what we all heard yesterday, it was their firm that recommended. He said 3 or 4 other attorneys, and that's the attorney she chose. And Your Honor, I didn't have anything to do with it. He was not having it. He was not having it at all. The judge was like, So.
No, any 3, I think he said 3. I gave her the name of 3 lawyers and this is the one she picked. And you think the other 2 that she rejected would have told her to testify and go against Keith? I don't think so if Claire's paying the bill. So forget it,
Well, that's why there was, how many crucial hearings were there? 11? I didn't even know what a crucial hearing was when I started with this. And they're very rare. And I think there was 10 or 11 crucial hearings. So the conflict of interest possibilities in this case, which is why this judge is so amazing, were prevalent and pervasive through the whole thing. So we kept having crucial hearings to make sure that everyone understood who was paying the bills and who was being represented. I like when the judge said, had she been here, counselor, whatever he was complaining about, that has nothing to do with what happened. He was convicted. The jury found him guilty in 4 hours or 5 hours. He said if she had been here, it would have been 10 minutes. So, right.
It's so true. It's so true. And his disdain for Claire Bronfman paying for these lawyers with her money and paying for the lawyers for people to go after people was just so powerful. You could just feel it. It was palpable. What did you think of Mark Agnefello's saying that Nexium as a group needed adult lawyer supervision?
It was ridiculous. He brought up Steve Coffey, so he was trying to put the blame apparently It felt like that Steve Coffey was their attorney and he was guiding the legal team. And then the judge said, we all know, counselor, that there's attorneys out there that will do it for the money. So that's not the case here. That didn't fly either. And they did have an evil attorney, evil Bob Crockett, who would sue or do anything for them, who was supposed to be writing a letter for Claire and showing up. Actually, he did. He did put a letter in, and he had said in his letter he'd be willing to come and speak on Claire's behalf. I don't know. Bobby didn't show up.
No one spoke on Claire's behalf.
No.
Both sides, her lawyers. No, right?
No.
And herself.
Yeah. She doesn't have anyone to speak on her behalf. No one spoke on Keith's behalf. Well, I shouldn't say that. He had the NXIVM side there that would have liked to speak, but it's a victim impact statement. It's not I think I'm going to do new social justice reform for a man that's in his 60s who raped 15-year-olds. And, he should be let out because he's really a good guy. Wow. I don't clearly understand.
Yeah, it's not going to fly. No one's going to take to the streets for a 60-year-old white pedophile in this day and age.
Or should they any day and age? But, I mean, it's just...
No.
It's absurd.
No.
The whole thing was absurd. But it was an amazing day to watch and listen to women and men that had been abused. And our society is okay and understanding with the fact that women can be abused. It's sad that they don't understand that men can be abused as well. And for the men that he did draw in, he abused them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to see some of these men standing up and speaking out because he manipulates someone that's that diabolical, that sociopathic. Most of them are better with women than they are with men. Sadly, he's capable of doing both.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think society sees the male side of that at all.
Mm-hmm.
They think men should be stronger or not be so susceptible. And they are. You heard Mark Vicente spoke, and so did
Adrian.
And, Nippy, Sarah's husband. And there's other men. There were other men that were there.
That was one of the things that you actually asked for, that he be put away like Charles Manson, yes, so that he can never hurt the public again. Do you know anything about that? About any kind of provision for him in the press and that kind of thing?
I know that the judge had said that when he did all that reading at the end, the probationary aspect of things, and I asked an attorney and I said, so why did he read all of that? And it's just standard protocol. They have to go through. Like if he lives 120 years and gets out, these are the guidelines he has to have. And the judge is going to do as the judge did with Claire. We won't be able to communicate with anyone. So do I think that he should be studied and he should be a real journalist that is interested in his methodologies, just from a historical standpoint, from a learning side? But do I think that he should be allowed to continue with, so they started off as We Are As You, and then they went to Make Justice Blind, which is just a frightening statement in itself, a bit of an oxymoron. And then
with Blindfold Her, which is even creepier. Who can even think of that handle on Twitter? Oh,
for a group that blindfolds their slaves before they brand them in some cases. So it's just, the whole thing is so twisted. Back to the point of should he be allowed to talk to anyone? No, because he's able to manipulate these people in ways that I don't think they even realize. When I said he doesn't draw bad people, I really do mean that. No one joins a cult. So I don't think anyone gets involved with Keith Raniere and goes, let me get involved with this guy and fuck people up. Because that's not why people come to him. They came to him because they really thought he had a 240 IQ. Thank you very much, the Eastern District of New York. He had all the shiny pennies around him. 240 IQ, the heiresses from the Seagram's fortune, Nancy Salzman, top NLP trainer, coach, person extraordinaire, 14,000 people, or as it started and it grew. You had all this stuff around, and you went, well, I want that too. But what you don't realize is the core is rotten, evil and rotten.
Mm.
And when you get to that point and you see that, you get out. A lot of people left and never said anything. And they just disappeared because it was better. easier, safer.
So how did they know to call you?
Oh, I was a bit vocal for a long time.
Right. And what was that like? Was that a burden at all to get all those calls, or did you feel simpatico with these people, or?
It started because when people would Google him, they would get me. And they would get me because of the bankruptcy. Every time you Googled him, my name would come up with all these legal filings. And the fact that he had me as the suppressive in the module, I mean, he would call me by name.
Wow.
Now, this is what a suppressive looks like. This is what you don't want to be. And then when people would get out, they'd go, okay, this guy's a little fucked up. I gotta go see what's going on here. I'm sorry, Roberta, I'll try not to swear.
It's okay.
So as I said to him, you made me a focal point to these people. You called me out by name. First you sent me that crazy Paradise Lost scribbling all over what's going to happen to me. I'm going to fall from grace. I mean, oh my God. And then when that didn't work, when I didn't come running back into your arms, you created a module and you called it the fall. And then you'd name me. So you sent these people my way. And I was happy to catch him on the other side because he escalated. And my greatest fear was at the end that he would escalate into a death of someone that was literally taking the fall for him.
And Kristen Snyder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I stopped and looked right at him. I said, do something decent before you die, Keith. Tell the Snyder family what really happened to their daughter, because you know. And that same blank stare that you were getting from the people in the room you were in,
right,
was the same blank stare on his face.
Can we talk a little bit about his own statement, which I expected, because a lot of times the judge will address the convicted person's statement at a sentencing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised that the judge didn't say anything, because basically what Keith was saying was that he believed he was innocent, which I thought was interesting. It's not that he is innocent. He believes that.
Mm-hmm.
And he also believes that everyone is lying, but he's also terribly sorry and remorseful for all these horrible liars that gave him 120 years life in prison. But he feels bad for hurting these horrible liars' feelings.
He's sorry that they feel that way. Not that they should, but that they do. He's sorry that they feel that way, even though they lied. He's sorry they feel that way. I mean, we were all looking at each other like...
It was so maniacal and regressive. I don't think people will understand how aggressive it is unless you heard the 4 hours of testimony of the victims.
Right.
It was just dark night of the soul type stuff. And then to be aggressive and call them liars.
Right.
That's just, it's disgusting.
Not just once, several times. We were looking around at each other like, did he just call us liars? Is that what he just said? Can we give him 160 years? How about 240 like his IQ? Let's give him 240.
He should have gotten 240 years for his IQ.
Yeah.
Right. Ridiculous claims of IQ points. I was surprised the judge didn't say anything, but I'm glad he didn't, because they would say, oh, the judge doesn't like him. But it was really over the top. The judge was like, I'm going to answer that comment with my 120-year sentence for you.
Right.
You think he has any chance of ever getting this overturned?
No.
I don't either.
That judge was so precise and so careful. And when he read the guidelines, you know, and he said, I agree with the, is it PSR?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Probation report. Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with Mr. Raniere on that. That shouldn't be leveled up. He kind of gave him some points here and there and then slammed him. So I think that I'm not a lawyer. I only try to pretend to be one when I have to save my life, which has been 20 years. Maybe I should go to law school.
Well, you know who you can service? The NXIVM cult, because they're in need of adult lawyer supervision. So there you go. You have your clientele.
I could be their fake attorney, like they have a fake PR person, and no thanks. I'm trying to get out of the dark. Someone said something to me about a particular individual, and I said, yeah, no, I've stepped out of the ring here.
So are you going to any more of these sentencings? Are you going to Nancy's? Are you going to...
Oh, yes, I'm going to Nancy.
Okay.
And did you hear Keith begging for Nancy?
Yes.
When he was saying, please don't blame Nancy. We're going to be a martyr now. Okay, you weren't Jesus Christ before. You're not going to be one later. We're not going to play martyr.
And Claire.
Yeah.
I was like, that the ship's already sailed on that one, buddy. She already got 81 months. What does he think he's going to do?
I think he's worried about, so she had 81 months on these charges. But if somebody pops up with something else, couldn't she get more? Who knows?
Oh, that's interesting.
I recall hearing Nancy's name, but in like, somebody said Nancy, Karen, something like as the people that were there in the early days, the people that were definitively knew what was going on and were part of that inner circle and helping to perpetuate his lie. And I don't recall anyone else really bringing up Nancy. A lot of what I talked about was Keith and how lazy he is. And, he was wrong again. I really enjoyed telling them how many things he was wrong about because he hates that. It was fun.
He said that you would be in jail the next time he saw you, right?
Yep. Last thing he said to me was, the next time I see you, you'll be dead or in jail. And I said to him, the last thing you said to me was, the next time I'll see you, you'll be dead or in jail. You were wrong again. You're in jail, and I pray to God that's where you're going to die, because the world should not have to deal with him. He needs to be locked away. Mm-hmm. I think some people come into the world evil, and I think Keith is one of them. And he just progressively, as he's been idolatrized and coddled and allowed to do all these things, he's just gotten progressively worse. One of the victims that spoke, and during the break, she said to me, how did he deal with you? And she flamed her arms around like, you're bigger than life and you're not submissive, you don't kick back. And I said, but he wasn't the Vanguard when I was with him. He tried to become the Vanguard with me, and I was like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work. I went to the first 16 days that were 16 weeks apart. They were on the weekends, so it was weekends. And before it was over, I was like, this is way dark, wrong. Therapy. It was therapy. For every intention, it was therapy. Those were my sessions I was having with Nancy in a class forum with people that were not educated, all telling their secrets. Collateral started on day one.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about like this being such a good versus evil story, and he seemed to really pick. I mean, you're right, just really good. People that were everything he was not. And I think Mark Vicente also spoke about that, how he liked to break people's innocence and trust in people, mm-hmm. and sort of, he called it their goodness. Mm-hmm. And, to report on this, you don't want to get too hyperbole. You don't want to be like, this is evil and this is, but I thought, it really was like one moment in time where you saw someone who was really, really evil, mm-hmm. and justice being given to him, And you brought up the fact that he really is parasitic and uses people. So how is that going to work in prison when he doesn't have it? He doesn't have contact with his supporters and his life. And he can't be, is he going to start like a prison ministry and he's going to like preach to them? Or can he survive without being in some exalted position?
Just someone said something pretty brilliant to me. And they said, well, what's another 4-letter word for cult? And I'm like, I don't know what. They said gang. So in a prison, there's gangs, and there's your Hells Angels and your Aryan race. So you have all these different factions, and you either get absorbed into one of them, or you're put in with pedophiles, freaks, and perverts, which is where Keith was at one point at MDC, and even they didn't like him, so they had to move him someplace else.
Sorry to laugh. Okay.
I know. He was shunned by his own people. They were like, yeah, dude, you're even too dark for us. The majority of the prison population is Black and Hispanic, right? Mm-hmm. For the most part, that's whatever reason, sadly, that's what it is. When they find out that in part, one of the reasons he's in there is for raping a 15-year-old Mexican girl and then branding her and then having relationships with her 2 sisters, it's not going to bode well for him, which is why he's scared. I think I saw a glimmer of fear for a second, but it was just a second. He knows.
So what do you think he's telling himself? I mean,
I'm the Vanguard. I'm the Vanguard.
he's going to use his Vanguard powers to reverse it?
I think he's convinced that they're going to appeal and he's going to get himself out. He has to. He's never wrong. So he has to be right. And the way he's right is through the appeal process.
Oh, Toni Natalie, thank you so much for talking to me about this and being so good to me in court and so generous with your time and yourself. I really appreciate it.
With people that always speak the truth like you do, Roberta, absolutely always. So thank you. Thank you for your hard work.
Oh, thank you.